Well, welcome to the shop. Today is Vyrock Day here in the shop. We have a Beeman R9 that has a problem, and basically the gun's not accurate anymore. So the idea was to go through it, find the problem, fix it, make custom spring guide, put the new spring, go through the gun, do our thing to it, and get it back to where it needs to be. Meanwhile, we decided to do a video on this because this turned out to be quite interesting. So if you're ready, we can get into this. And I decided to throw some other things in there I'm going to share with you. So it's a Beeman R9. I got the gun. I saw that the butt pad had a chunk missing out of it. Other than that, the gun was in really good shape. Um, so I checked the stock to see if it was cracked, and it wasn't. So we took it further and put a zeroed scope on it. I have a zeroed scope that's in my shop, and it stays that way. It doesn't get used for anything else but for the guns that I work on. So we put that on there. We put a bullseye out at 18 yards, and we proceeded to shoot at the bullseye to see what the gun would do. And basically, it wouldn't group, and it was not close to the bullseye dot either. Then we took the gun and we started to dismantle it, and I cleaned the bore out so I can do a proper pellet to bore test. And basically, I found towards the choke end of the barrel end where the choke is that there were two spots that were catching the pellet as it went into one rough area, and then it went into another catchy rough area, and then it finally went into the choke area. Nobody knows why. I asked him if there was any kids that had his gun. No, no, no was the answer. So now we have a gun that has an issue with the barrel when all along this gun used to be very accurate. Now, I can't figure it out. Now, I did take a bore scope and got down in the bore to try to see what I could find. And the only thing I could see, because the bore scope makes things too magnified, was leftover remnant pieces from the white patches. In a certain area of the bore, most likely the rough part that was catching the pellet in those two areas. It wasn't in the rest of the circumference of the inside diameter of that area of the bore. So I told the owner, I go, look, at this point, I got to be able to take the barrel out of the block if I'm going to cut, crown it, and redo it on a lathe with a 4-jaw chuck and a dial indicator. And I can't do it because it has the star nut on it. But meanwhile, I don't have the right tool. And I did get permission to attempt to take the star nut off to see what would happen, but I couldn't get the star nut off. I heated it up, let it cool down, and basically had a pair of snap ring pliers, and I thought maybe the nut would turn off then, but it didn't. Now that's going with the typical lefty loosey righty tighty. It shouldn't have been anything less or more, but it wouldn't budge for me. So at that point, we ordered another new barrel, right, from Air Guns of Arizona. Spoke to Shane over there, and I asked him to please check the pellet to bore fit before he sends it out because I need a good barrel. And at any rate, he said he would. Well, later on, we got that barrel, and there's an issue with that barrel, but we can talk about that later. Meanwhile, we took the cocking arm off the barrel because they don't come with cocking arms, and I asked for a rivet pin, and I asked if it's okay, and he didn't care. I can do whatever I want with the leftover bad barrel. At that point, I decided to throw it on the lathe, and I got some video footage of it, of me drilling that out, and then attempting to take the barrel out once the nut was drilled out of the barrel block. Now, once and I did that, basically we have a 22, maybe you can see that. Here's the 22 cal barrel block with the crack in it. Okay, so we drilled down about where my finger is, and I tried to press the rest out, and she didn't want to go out. So the new Vyrock barrels, they are not pinned. See, here's the pin type, right? That's what the pin looks like, but they're not pinned. They have the star nut. Now, I took the remnant barrel, which is in my hand, and here's what the breech configuration looks like when we're all done. I got it out of the barrel, and once I knew how to do it, I simply took a 177 barrel that I had laying around, was never even fired, and I took the barrel out of that. Then we reinstalled it after doing the crown, and we wound up with around 11 and a half inches. And I think you can see that if I zoom in a little bit. I don't know how that looks. But I did that, and I got it back into a 177 barrel block. And this piece here is just a press fit piece that I machined. So instead of doing a choke, I press fitted on it. It snugs up this part of the bore a little bit. Sometimes I like to do that when it's for me. But anyway, now we're going to see, just for the heck of it, what's the difference between 11.5 inch barrel and a 16-inch barrel that's on its way from Air Guns of Arizona. But meanwhile, I thought I would show you what the inside of the barrel looked like. Most people have not ever seen this. So here's your Vyrock barrel block. And here is what the barrel looks like. I'll get you zoomed in a little bit better than that. Let's see if we can't do that. A little bit like that. Now, you can see there's these two flat spots right there. See them? So it gets reduced down here from the typical size of the barrel so that when this comes down into this area, it hits this block and stops. Then it has basically these two flat spots right there, and then it drops down. Now these are from two different barrels, but there's your flat spots. It drops, it has the splines, and then basically the diameter drops down, heads back this way, and then it gets threaded, and then the star nut gets put on right from the factory, and that's what they look like. The machine work on the Vyrock barrel is absolutely outstanding. But it's even finished. I mean, it's not raw, it's been finished. So, at any rate, now we know how to take one off. I may go to my mill machine later, I may not, and make the actual nut to remove the star nut, but that's time consuming, and I don't really plan on removing that many barrels from Vyrock blocks. Typical ones that I have are pinned, like I did when I reinstalled it here, but that pin. You know, I don't think I'm going to actually make anything off my mill machine. So now that I got you up to speed on all this, you know, there's no sense in trying to stick up some type of lapping compound. Let me get you over here, up here past the choke area, because now you're going through the crown, now you're going through the choke, and you're trying to get in there and work back and forth, and you don't have anything that's proper. You know, it's just isn't going to happen. So since we can't get on the lathe to do four-jaw chuck, like I said, with the barrel out of the block, set up properly with a dial indicator, it just makes more sense to get the new barrel down here, plus the labor that's involved. But meanwhile, I did learn something. We got the new barrel in the block. I'm ready to go with that. And I want to talk about some breech seal things and some things I found with the Vyrock jam that I thought you might find interesting. So as far as the breech seals, if you have breech seals on your Vyrock, you'll find out if you, over a period of time, if you buy things like me where you get like 6 of these or 4 of those or whatever, you get a period of time where you have different things from different vendors. And if you measure these breech seals, the diameters, the height of them is different. Not the diameter, but the height. And they vary. So you need to take your analog calipers and find out how tall it is, right? And then see what the differences is. Now, the best thing to do with a breech seal is basically is to see what it's giving you when you're shooting the gun. Now, I'm all set up here in my shop. I'm going to go up here, and I forgot to tell you that my shop foreman scooter's hanging out. So everybody just watch your P's and Q's, please. It kind of makes me nervous. But we're all set up with the bean bag, and we're all set up really good. So my end for testing is really rock solid. It may not be perfect, but it's rock solid as far as I'm concerned. Because you want to get the shooter out of the way. But the main thing is if you're shooting at 12 to 15 to 17, 18 yards to test what's going on with your breech seal, the pudding and the proof is in the pudding, right? If you have consistency, right, and you're not skipping all over the place, well, then I'd say your breech seal is working just fine, and everything's working the way it's supposed to. Now, as far as the breech seals goes, the breech seal has 2 jobs. Okay, it's not there just to hold the air as it leaves the air chamber and make a seal. That breech seal works together with this jam so the jam can do its job. And without that breech seal, the jam will not be able to do its job. Now, what happens is basically the breech seal creates tension between the receiver tube, right, and the barrel block. Along with that and the jam, then it creates the lock up. If you have too much breech seal, you have too much tension, there's a good chance that you're going to have this barrel where it's going to want to shift when you fire the gun. Now, if you have not enough tension, your barrel block is going to want to shift again when you fire the gun. Now, what I found on these particular guns, basically, first of all, it's an R9, so the power level's within a certain area. It is not a Benjamin Trail shooting 900 feet per second at .22, which has a bigger kick. But, it does have a little bit of power to it, and it will shift if it's not set right. But what I found with these particular seals, and they vary too. I mean, take a look at the green one, which I have no idea where it came from. Look how supple that is, right? That's real easy peasy to do that. And then you take another one here, and I can squeeze that, and that's a lot firmer. And then this one here, let's see if I can get it in there. That's even a little bit more firmer. But they vary. Now, I would say this is the Virox seal, and I would say this is a Vortex seal, and I'm not sure if that's an old Macari seal. I have no idea. It was in that 177 barrel. But what I found out is that these breech seals, even though they're newer materials, they eventually will level off a little bit once the barrel block has been used and it's been closing up through a period of time. I found that the bottom of the breech seal and the bottom of the barrel block there, once it's down in there, will start to mush out a little bit. And that's when the seal becomes hard to get out. Now, if you have that problem, you can take an Allen wrench, put a nice fine point on it so you can poke into the side of the seal and pry up, go on all the way around until you start working the seal out. But that's what I found happens. So now you could put a breech seal in, right? And what I found out is it's definitely going to change the point of impact, right? Depending upon how high it is. So if you're aiming at the bullseye dot, you'll see where it starts out at one level, and through time and through a little bit of period, and it doesn't take that long, you keep opening and closing the barrel, the bottom mushes out a little bit down inside the block, and then the barrel point of impact will start to lower just enough where it changes your point of impact. Nothing you can actually see, but you'll see it on the target board. So what I normally do when I am all done, I put a zeroed scope on it. Now we got everything else honed in. We are now going to hone the barrel in. The seal's done. The seal's working. It's giving me consistency. I'm not skipping and jumping all over the place. Now it's time to hone the brand new barrel in with the zeroed scope. Are you with me? Do you like the smell of this? Yes. Now we're going to hone the barrel in. Well, Mike, why do you need to hone the barrel in? Well, when you shoot the gun, how close are you to the bullseye dot? My guess is you're going to be either 4.5 to 6 to 9 to 10 inches, depending upon how high that breech seal shifted your barrel, because that barrel will not close all the way where the breech seal is going to keep it from closing as much as it can. But at any rate, now that you have a breech seal settled down and where it needs to go as far as height and all that, now it's time to adjust the barrel. So doing that with my press, and then I carefully shoot the gun again. I see where the point of impact is, and I keep bending the barrel little by little to shift the point of impact, and it doesn't take much to get me close to the bullseye dot. I leave a little bit for the next guy, which is going to be the owner, and then he's going to have his own scope set up, and then at least I'm going to get him close. So in other words, you're not just going to throw a breech seal in the gun and call it good. You should take the time to see, look, what's the gap on my gun? You got to know these things so you have peace of mind. Every gun's going to have a gap of some sort, and it's good to know the information. Well, you get a feeler gauge out that has a thousandths, and you get in there between and see what you can get between your barrel block and your receiver. Hey, you know what? I got 5 thousandths gap. At least now you know there's 5 thousandths of a gap. Right? Now, this one had 6. And we came up with the top of the breech seal here, where the top of the breech seal had what was it, 18 thousandths to my understanding. Well, let's look at that real quick, right? So 18,000 came above the block, and if I have a 6,000 gap, what's that leave me for the seal getting crushed between the receiver and the barrel block? Around 11 to 12,000. And in my book, that's not going to be enough. It may make a seal, but it's not going to create enough tension. But at any rate, what I did find was basically I went through the seals. I picked the one that was bigger. I got it down in there. Now, as far as measuring the height of your breech seal, if you're still with me, if you didn't fall asleep, I tried it different ways. Number one, you reach for your analog calipers, and I could tell you I did my best with that, and it just doesn't work. You're not going to be plumb, level, and square. Then I found a nice piece of flat, smooth, clean metal. I put that on top of my breech seal, right? I had the barrel out of the gun. I had it all set up. We're not going to drop the rest of the gun on the floor while we're trying to figure out what the height of the breech seal is. So get it out of your way. I did that, and I put the feeler gauge between the two, and I found that that was even not giving me the best reading of all. Where are you here? Let's get over here more. What I found actually did it for me was simply leaving it the way it was, getting what I thought was the best size for the breech seal close to it. And then I was careful to make sure everything was where it was. And I got in there like this, nice and flat, right? And then jammed up to the side of the breech seal. And I could visually see that I was below it. And at that point, then I go to the next higher one, do the same thing. And I can see, you know what, we're getting there. I'm pretty much close to the top. We're going to check it again with another one and pick out which one you think is the best. And I found that out to be the easiest and most correct. But at any rate, now you know what you're dealing with, right? Now you know, hey, I know what my gun's doing. And you can go through your batch of seals and see, you know what? My seals are kind of on the low side. Well, now you have to make a decision. Do I need to shim my seal, or do I need to take some of the seal down? Either way, at least you know. But as far as what you need, you need a good proper seal between this and the receiver, so it's a good lockup. And I would say at least somewhere around 20 thousandths of a seal getting squished, maybe a little bit less. But you got to figure that out. I'm not saying that's what it is, but you need enough seal to create enough tension. Does that make sense to you? Okay. And also don't forget that these will mush out at the bottom and they'll settle down. They'll get crushed to a certain level. But at any rate, there it is in a nutshell. And again, the tell is at your target board if you get consistency. All right. Well, we got rid of that. That was a tongue full. So let's talk about the breech block area with the jam that I wanted to talk about. I've had 4 Vyrock barrel blocks in here. You'll know why later on in the video. We had the 22 barrel block, the 177, and the new 22 barrel block that came. And each one I took the jam out because when I go through a gun, I go through the gun from top to bottom. Nothing gets left, and believe me, we are here to methodically go through the gun. We are not in a hurry to get rid of the gun and be done with it. So we pulled the jam out, which can be a pain, but I got it all set up for that. And then, you know, they have a real nice hefty spring. But I noticed that once you go, I put the jam back in without the spring just to see what the fit was. And when I got up to the flat spot, that's when I found out that they all have a problem where they get hung up and they don't want to go in and out of the gun. No, they did not want to go in and out of the gun. So under that spring tension pressure, yes, and the force of your cocking arm pushing everything back, it's going to go in and out, but it shouldn't work that way, and I don't know why Vyrock does that. So I simply just honed it out to remove the finish, and that was basically enough to get the jam to work properly. And I just want to throw that out there. These are the things you find. Well, with that said, now we're going to find out, hey, you know what? What's the difference between an 11.5 inch barrel? Is there a difference? And a 16th inch Vyrock barrel coming in at 22 cal. But anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoy this video. I got some clips of me drilling the barrel block out, nothing fancy, and I got some stuff. Next clip, we're going to talk about what's so important about pellet to bore fit in an air rifle. So stay tuned and hang on. We got more to get into. Thanks for hanging out. All right, well, let's talk about some air gun stuff that I was talking about earlier that I wanted to get into. Now, I had a great conversation with a Corey McCann, and we were just hitting it off, talking about all kinds of air gun things. And Corey works for Tom over there in Vortec Products. Meanwhile, we got in a conversation about barrels and pellet to bore fit and all this stuff, and we came up with why is it so difficult for an air gun to have a good proper pellet to bore fit. In other words, you get these barrels, you clean them, you do your pellet to bore test. It's a light pellet to bore drag, and then you come to a spot where it opens up and it has free fall, or it's just ridiculous, and it's very frustrating for you, the air gunner, because you spend all this money for a fine gun and then you're getting something ho-hum as far as the barrel pellet to bore fit. But anyway, the question came up, why is that? Well, the answer is very simple. He knew it and I knew it. It's because the tooling in these companies wear down, and they got so much to produce and so much goes out through the world that the tooling wears down, and tooling's very expensive and they're not about to throw it out. Now, I'm going to guess that in their mind that the bore and pellet to bore fit has a range where if as long as they're in that range, they're going to call it good. So it depends on where your gun came out of the batch or the run from closest to the tooling being as new. Now, interesting enough, I had ordered a 20 cal barrel a couple months back from Air Guns of Arizona. Took a couple months to get it, so it told me, you know what, it's coming from Germany. And when I got it, I cleaned the barrel out and I did a pellet to bore, and I got to tell you, I was shocked. It was a snug pellet to bore fit, and there was no guessing about it, but it was smooth as glass. Now, the only thing I didn't like is when I hit the choke, it was too much, and it still was smooth as glass, and I knew that we were not going to leave that choke like that. We were going to have to do something about it. But that tells me maybe that barrel came from fresh tooling. I don't know. So maybe right now where the Virocs are, that Crail is pretty much running thin, Air Guns of Arizona is running thin, and I talked to guys over there at Crail and I asked them what's going on with Viroc. And they told me that basically Viroc since COVID has not saying a word, but this is what's going on, and nobody's been getting anything, and everybody's kind of running low. Now, with that said, I went over to Air Guns of Arizona and I went and pre-ordered a 97K in .20 because they have that listed where you can pre-order them. So I did. And basically, I had one and I sold it and I regret it, and now we're going to get one back. But meanwhile, back to our conversation, that's why you get what you get with your Viroc gun. Now, that happens with everybody else too. So it's no different. The tooling just simply wears down and they're not going to throw it out. Now let's talk about what's so important about a pellet to bore fitting break barrel gun. Let's leave PVCs and PVCs. I'm a plumber. I'm a retired plumber. PCP in their own lane. Let's talk about the break barrel gun. Now some guys think, yeah, it's no big deal. It doesn't matter if I have a light pellet to bore fit because my skirt's going to flare out and that's going to be fine. Or I got a choke and that's going to be fine. You know what it really comes down to is your gun's not that powerful. You don't have much recoil, and Viroc made it, and that's why your gun seems to be doing pretty good. But what you came up with there is totally wrong. Okay, now let's talk about that. You cannot have a gun where you are relying on whatever the skirt does or doesn't do. That's regardless. Now, the pellet relies on the proper pellet to bore fit, and hopefully it's a nice, smooth, snug pellet to bore fit, okay? Now, the reason why is because why the pellet's in the bore, this is all common sense, by the way. This is not rocket science. Why the pellet's in the bore is stabilizing the pellet. Not just here, not just there. It's completely stabilizing the pellet properly. And it's not getting blow by through the skirt, right? Because you have a bad pellet to bore fit. So if you have a really good barrel and you're the pellet in the bore, and now you have a bore that's working for you, not against you. And it's not just that you're going to work and come out of the gun and hit something. Now something's working together as a team. So the pellet's now in the bore. It's a good pellet to bore fit. And as it goes through that bore, we all know that the bore has its own barrel harmonics. Yes, well, what happens with the pellet? When the pellet's flying through the air ready to hit its target, it has its own harmonic buzz tone, whatever you want to call it. It also has its own harmonics also. Now, if you have the proper barrel, right, and you have the proper pellet to bore fit and the proper barrel length for that power of gun, you have all that combination coming together to do a job and work together as a team. Now, let's say you're the pellet going through the bore and everything's working good. Now you're coming up to the choke, okay? Now, because the barrel has put you in the proper setup, the proper position, honed you in and kept you there, now you're ready for the choke. So now when you go through the choke, it's a plus, right? And if whether or not you have a choke really doesn't matter as long as you have a good pellet to bore fitting gun and a good crown. But let's talk about what happens if you're a pellet and you don't have a proper pellet to bore fit. And say it's a light drag and you have a loose spot. Well, first of all, you're going to get blow by, right? Don't tell me the skirt's flaring out and going to keep that from happening, because that's not what happens. You get blow by. Second of all, you're not going to be stable, right? Now, the guy out there is going to say, well, don't worry about it, the choke's going to square and save the day. No, that's totally wrong. Yes, the choke does help. I've had Hatsons where the barrels were mediocre and I'd done a choke on them and it made it better, but the choke is not there to save the day. That's not the right process. Now, if you're in the barrel and you have a loose spot here and you're not a good pellet to bore fit, and you're wobbling up the bore like this in slow motion, right? What happens to you when you hit the choke? Well, it's not rocket science. You're not ready for it. You are not lined up ready for that choke. And what happens is you as the pellet go like that because all of a sudden you got something trying to rectify you when you're going through it, trying to straighten your butt out and hone you in. And the problem is you should have been honed in ahead of time with the proper pellet to bore fit. Now that's an exaggeration, but that's how it is and that's the way it should be, not the other way around. We're not relying on skirts flaring out and the choke to save the day. The only difference is you got a good made rifle and it's not that powerful, so you don't have a lot of recoil, and so the gun seems to be doing pretty good. But there's a difference. The difference is everything on your gun honed in to work together to create and do the best it can possibly do, or is it just hanging in there and being okay, here I am, I'm not too bad, enjoy shooting me? All right, well, there it is in a nutshell. Now, with all that said, ironically enough, I was talking to Corey, and Corey told me that Tom was going to be coming out pretty soon with some good stuff, and it did. It happened. The Pyramid Air Cup came, and then I was able to see what Tom came out with. And ironically, he came out with new barrels for your Viroc gun. And that's great because if you have a ho-hum barrel, you can go to Tom, he'll take it out. He's got these aluminum barrels with his liners in them that have a good pellet to bore fit, and he'll install them in your barrel block, and then you'll be good to go. Now all of a sudden your gun's going to have a good barrel, good pellet to bore fit, and it's going to be lighter. You may even really like it more. It'll be a good grab and go deal. But anyway, I thought that was really cool. I almost fell off my chair when I saw that. And then to top it off, like the cherry on the cake, he came out with these gas rams you can put in your Viroc, right? You don't need an HW90. Well, now you can put a gas ram in your Viroc, you can adjust it, you can lower it, it's easy peasy. It's just something cool that he's developed for air guns. And you know what? It's about time. Now, if you really take the time to think about it, I don't know Tom personally, but I could tell you just by looking at his website all these years that he is really interested in trying to advance air guns to another level. He's always interested in trying to come up with something new that no one else came up with because he knows it's out there. He knows there are things to be able to come out in air guns that nobody came out with. He knows there's more with air guns. And you know what? I know that because I feel the same way. I do a lot of stuff here and I've discovered a lot of things, but somebody like Tom from Vortec, you know, the writing's on the wall. You can see it when you go to his website. He's got different springs, he's got different kits, he's got different seals. I mean, it speaks for itself. But anyway, with that said, thanks Tom for being who you are. I know you're out there and I really appreciate what you do. And thanks Corey for a great conversation. I'll see you on another clip. Let's find out what happens with this barrel and the new one. This will be cool. See you on another clip. Well, I heard somebody out there moaning and groaning. They want to see some of this drilling. So for those who don't, just cover your ears. I'm only going to go a little bit. I already started it just so you can see a little bit of the drilling. Now, I do want to point out that my lathe motor is very weak. The bearings need to be replaced. So I got to go easy. Otherwise, she wants to die down. So our intentions with this is to drill back through the barrel close to the front where it'll leave us enough to basically get past the skinny part but leave some meat behind, and then whatever we leave behind, basically we're going to mill it out. But we'll get enough of it out so we can press the rest of the barrel out, and that's going to be 3/4 of the barrel as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, you can see my lathe motor dying out, so I got to go slow. But now you see what's going on. So I'm going to spare everybody the long movie here, and we're going to get to the end of the clip. All right, well, here's a sneak peek down in there. I don't know if you can see it. That's actually the drill bit poking its head through. That represents what the barrel would be. So there it is. You can see all the stuff. We still have a ways to go. And again, to reiterate ourselves, once we get the drill bit down, boy, that block's hot, down about this far where my finger is, then we can say, all right, we're good. We'll press that out. And even again, like I said, that little bit is really going to put up a struggle, because Vyrock did an amazing job when they made this. Anyway, there it is. I'll see you. We're going to do this off camera. Well, it turns out a brand new barrel has an issue, right? The crown is bad. Now take a look at the picture. I'll zoom you in a little bit. The picture itself on the phone is pretty much blown up. So I'm going to say around 10:30 till 4 to 5 o'clock, the crown thins out. And basically from 4 o'clock till 10 o'clock, it widens up. It's just completely off. And I can't get accuracy out of the gun. Well, here's a Vyrock tip for you. You have these 4 square knockouts that go in the back of the gun where the receiver tube is. And often they get buggered up trying to get them in and out, especially if it's your gun and you're working on it. You know, and then they become a pain, and often they fit the hole that they came out of the best, but by the time you go to put them back, you're fussing around trying to figure out which one goes in where to get it in properly. Well, you can get rid of all that stuff by simply taking your Dremel and put a fine small hone-in sanding drum on there. You can go around all the sides of these and kiss them and take the finish off and get them down and clean them up and smooth them out. Then you get these tits here. They basically will get all buggered up and edgy, and that fights you as well. So you can carefully go around the edge of the tit there and smooth and knock down off of anything that's buggered up and edgy. And then by the time you're all done, you can simply get these things to where you can drop them in any hole, right? You can take enough away where you can get them in any hole, even do it with one hand. So obviously you got to get the curvature just right for the tube, and then you go to put it in. It looks like this, and you're done. Aggravation is done. Now these things look like they're steel, but they're not. They're actually aluminum. This is a magnetic tip, and you can see here they will not pick up the pieces, but they'll pick up the steel like it's supposed to. So there it is. There's your one little thing that if you're dealing with your guns, you can get rid of that nonsense. Some guys I've heard will actually they won't put the 4 back. You know what? It was made for 4. Put the 4 back. If you lose 2, then you'll have 2 for a spare, but they'll all be where they need to be. But you can dress them down and smooth them up so that you don't have a problem getting them in and out of the gun. But anyway, see you on the next clip. All right, well, the new barrel finally came, and this time it has a good crown. And this time the breech is a little snugger, the way I like it, rather than too loose like the last one was. And the pellet to bore fit isn't bad either. Now, I want you to listen, if you can, if this mic picks it up, to how smooth the shot cycle is. This basically feels hydraulic. Everything is smooth as glass. So we were using the Crossman Dome pellets, 14.3 grain. It's a .22 Beeman R9. And again, the pellet trap has the towels stuffed in it. So listen real good. We'll do one more. And there it is. Now we'll talk a little bit later on about this, but right now I am very happy. This is what a smooth tune gun is supposed to sound like, not have wood knock and piston slap. See you on the next clip. Okay, well, the new barrel is basically in line with the bullseye there, but it's 4.5 inches low. Let's see if I can do this. So here's our aiming point there at that bullseye. We were center of it, but we were 4.5 inches low. So we're going to have to adjust the barrel now. And of course we're using a zeroed scope. Now this is a lot better than the other barrel, which was like 9.5 inches lower, as well as the original barrel that came into the shop, which was also around 9 inches lower. But anyway, that's what we're going to do now. We're going to adjust this so that's hitting where it's supposed to be with the zeroed out scope. Alrighty, so the barrel's been adjusted, and now we are getting, this is I believe 4 in a ragged hole. This was the one after the barrel was adjusted too high. We had to bring it back down, and now we are good. Now with that, we are going to actually clean the bore with a special bore cleaner in order to smooth the brand new bore down a bit. So we'll see you on the next clip. I'm going to talk about barrel crowns and different things like that. So basically the crown on the air rifle is the part that's dead center that has a slight chamfer on it. And the whole reason of that is done is so that the very ends of the landing groove are completely even all the way around and basically nice and clean cut. And then usually it's done with some lapping compound afterwards so that when you're all done you can stick your Q-tip in there and you won't get a pull because there's nothing there jagged to catch the Q-tip, and that's what you want. So when the pellet comes out, there's nothing to catch and build up of any lead. Then you have the barrel crown's face. Let's put it that way. It's the actual profile after you come out of the bore. Now there is an 11-degree crown, which basically doesn't have that chamfer. It literally comes out on 11 degrees from the inside of the bore and works its way all the way up and out on some type of degree, which is 11 degrees. And it's kind of like the dished out look, and it's all in one shot. So that's how they take care of that crown on that particular profile. This profile is slightly recessed, right? It comes out, it's first you have your chamfer on your crown, then it goes horizontally, then it goes back to its chamfer up a little bit, and then it goes horizontally again. And it also makes this part a little bit on the recessed. So that's what that is. Anyway, there it is on the crown. As far as degree on your chamfer for crowns, it doesn't matter as long as everything's even and clean and done properly. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you in the next clip. Well, the R9's on its way back. But I brought in a 97K and 22 that I just recently got. It's practically brand new. The owner only had a couple months. And I got a good deal on it. The reason I brought it in is because it also has like an 11-inch barrel. You know, this got around 750 over the Kearney and 22 cal. And the R9 got 700 feet per second and 22 cal. And with the shorter barrel, that's why I brought it in, at 11.5 inches, we got a little bit more feet per second. It was a lot louder. And as far as accuracy goes, basically only went out to 18 yards, but they were both just as accurate. So you'd have to take it out further to see, if you had a barrel like this, basically what your R9 is going to do compared to the 16-inch barrel as far as accuracy. And the gun basically went from stem to stern, right? We made a nice custom Delrin fitting spring guide, right? It's not generic. We made a nice custom fitting top hat for it that fits the stem properly as well as the inside diameter of the piston. And then we took and made sure the new breech seal was settled in just right and wasn't going to shift anymore. And at that point, we took a zeroed out scope and we adjusted the barrel for the zeroed out scope at 18 yards so the gun's all honed in and shooting real nice. And it's nice and smooth and quiet. But it wasn't like that at first. No, I had a problem with the 2 aftermarket piston seals that I used. You know, at the end of the day, you put your hard work in, you get these seals, the gun does fire and it does work, you do get your feet per second, but you get your piston knock and piston slap. And you shouldn't be getting that on a Virock. That's absolutely ridiculous. So I had to take the gun apart again and finally do my thing to it to get rid of the piston slap and the wood knock. Now the gun's nice and smooth and quiet and it feels hydraulic. You know, it's only 2023. I don't know why no one's ever addressed this problem, why no one's ever realized it was a problem. It's just ridiculous. You just get the same old urethane seals that's been made for 30 years now, or the other seal maker makes his seals pretty much the same other than it's a different material. But hopefully soon this problem's going to be solved. But anyway, we got our gun where we want it. It's nice and quiet. It shoots right now, and I'm a happy camper. And I got a 97K and 22, so it should be all smiles. It's just that I'm having a rough morning. My camera's messing up. My microphone's messing up. I want to get this clip done so I can move on. Well, anyway, we are all done. Oh, I do want to say, just because we have more feet per second on a shorter barrel, don't go run into your air gun board and hurry up and write in shorter barrels equal more feet per second. Look, shorter barrels equal a mess under the wrong conditions with the different guns. So stay in your lane. That's for this gun, this power gun, and this make of gun. You get into a big magnum with shorter barrels, and you're going to lose something as part of what needs to be to make the equation, right? So in other words, when you have a gun and everything's there doing its job, right? You got the right seal, you got the right breech seal setting, you got the barrel honed in, you got everything going for the gun that needs to go. You got the right pellet to bore fit, okay? You got the right barrel length for that power of gun. All these things matter. So if you just go start chopping barrels, well, now you're in a different level. You're going to change things that you shouldn't have changed, because bigger guns need different things, and all these things matter. And everything on a gun matters. And a lot of times you just have guns that are shooting and people are okay with it, but they're not honed in and they're missing things that they need, such as a good proper pellet to bore fit and the proper length barrel for that power of gun. All these things matter. Anyway, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you in the next clip. And there won't be a next clip, but there will be a video on the Benjamin Trail Part 2. You're not going to want to miss that.